Morning, Deirdre.
Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
I am wonderful. How many seconds is it going to take you to guess where I am?
Well, I don't need to guess. I recognize it. That's Burrow.
Yes, exactly.
I've spent good time there. Yes, there it is. That's the Royal Mile, I believe, the street right down the middle of the city. And I believe there are still sheep grazing up on the hills that you see in the background there.
A little doubt, Deirdre. I have little
Good
doubt.
place.
So, we're talking about the use of AI by leaders and more than just leaders, right?
Yes, absolutely. And maybe we set up this conversation a bit. We've spent the past number of weeks creating, what is it, 6 or 7 videos telling people how to use the LLMs and the reasoning models, how to work on problems that people encounter in their work. We're going to get into a deep conversation on the human machine partnership. That is how humans work with these machines to get the results you want. Today's video is an interim. We're going to take a breath and talk about you, the leader of an organization, and how what you bring to this human machine partnership affects the output that you get, how you have to do a lot of work to prepare yourself, to stay prepared, and to make sure that you're continuing to do the things that have led to success already. Now, I'm using the term here, human machine partnership, because increasingly, if you read the newspapers, it's very easy to get the wrong impression of what these new reasoning models and the LLMs do. They don't take over and make decisions. They're driven by humans. And you, as the leader of the organization, are responsible for how these models are driven in your organization because you're responsible for output and results. That means that you need to learn how to use these models, but not just the way we've been showing you, not just factually, oh, you enter this prompt, you get this result, you do this next, and so forth. But this is a mindset shift change. And maybe that's the way to describe what we're talking about today, Tom. It's a mind shift change of this technology as not a technology as tools. That is not as technology the way you're used to using it, but as technology as a partner to lead to greater productivity in your organization, and frankly, a restatement of the substance of the work that you've been doing. And we'll keep coming back to those 2 points, the greater productivity and the changed substance of the work, I think. And the reason you change your mindset is that you are the one who drives the use of these models. You need to prepare for this. You need to understand what you bring to it. Let me stop for a second here, Tom, and ask if you want to jump in or if I should keep going.
Yeah, sure. So, what we just if I were to stop and try to take and build on what you're saying, you and I focus on leading and building businesses. That's what we focus on. And what we're looking for, though, is not just the old-fashioned, how do you do it?
Right.
We're looking at what's happening in the world, what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening geopolitically, what's happening geoeconomically, right? What's going on, and what technically, from a technological point, what's happening, and how is that changing what we're doing, and what is it then that we have to still have in our tool set to do this, to build these things. And when you and I are looking at this, we're increasingly coming to the point, and we think we're seeing evidence of this from other people, which is good. You and I just talked about a couple of one person we're seeing that is beginning to show some light in the way they're thinking about this in the way we do. Whether that's good or correct or not, we have no idea, dude. We're soothsayers just like the rest, but is Mark Benioff, right? I mean, he just gave hints at something he came up with that I saw yesterday, where he's starting to think about this the way you and I do, that this change that's occurring through the use of these models, and then also the more pointed use as agents, is going to have as significant effect, we believe, as the internet did in coming in. We believe that's the significance of it. Now, what did that do? What did the internet do? It did two things, right? One thing it did was it changed productivity. It opened up enormously the visibility of information, not just anywhere in the world, right? And for sure, if there's anybody watching outside, they got it too, right? Outside the world, they got it too. Certainly
Right.
now, with the technology we're using to broadcast this stuff all over the world. But that was a material change. But the second thing it did, it materially changed work, materially changed work, the
Correct.
substance of work. We believe this is going to do the exact same thing. It's going to change not just the productivity and accelerate productivity, but it's going to change the substance of everybody's work. And that's the part that's not quite seeing the balance yet in this. We're seeing this one and everybody's going, oh my gosh, everybody's going to get laid off. What we're not seeing is that it's going to change the substance of work. Does it mean the same thing, though? That are people that are not keeping up are going to fall behind? Absolutely.
Yes.
And that, but here's the worst part of that for those of us who build and lead businesses, Deirdre, is that unless you are staying ahead of these models, you will fall further behind, right? So one of the things we're going to talk about, and we've tried to introduce this to people through these 6 videos we've done, 62 through 67. This is 67. Through these 6 videos is to introduce people to the use of these models as leading them, not following them. And we talk about a concept that I like to call, number one is, don't take the model too seriously. You're still in charge.
Right.
It's like a very smart, and you like to say it's a very smart graduate student who has limited experience. Very smart, with incredible capability and incredible access to information, but lacks your judgment and experience. And that's what you need to bring to it. So with that, I'm going to stop, Deirdre, and just having built that out a little bit to say, what are we doing here and why are we doing it? And why are we spending so much time on this? It's because we think that this is a capability that anybody who's leading and building something needs to be able to learn this and get comfortable with this. We're going to be spending our time, I'm assuming, for a great many years to helping people understand this and building it into this. But just to there, I'm going to now turn it back over to you to take it to the next point that talks about you have a fundamental judgment, and you were making this point to me again in a hard way yesterday. No, not a hard way, because you don't function that way, but in a very serious way, that you said this changes the responsibilities of people who lead. So I'm going to turn it back over to you and let you take people down that path.
Correct. And this is the path of what does it mean to be the human?
By the way, I need to say, Deirdre, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Notice I waited so I'd catch you off guard. But you did do your favorite thing this morning, didn't you?
I went birding to celebrate my birthday. Yes.
Good.
So lots of good birds. They celebrated my birthday too.
All of us wish you a happy birthday, including all of your students who continue to this day to love you and stay in touch with you. So just to pass that along, and from all of my members of my family, we also wish you a happy birthday.
Well, thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome, Deirdre.
you.
Including Zena, who you haven't met yet.
Including Zena. I should explain that Zena is your Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Ridgeback, yes, she is.
Anyway, I was starting to talk about what does it mean to be the human in the human-machine partnership. And I'm going to actually be writing an essay on this because I think this requires just setting out some things in more detail than we want to go into in this conversation. We'll publish this week leading up to our July 20th Sunday workshop, in which we're really starting to dig into the details of how the human-machine partnership works. And then after that Sunday workshop, we're going to do at least 2 more videos where we really drill down into those details of how you set up your human-machine partnership and make sure that the partnership you establish generates the results you want. But let's come back to the concept of being the human here. As you've been saying, Tom, you as the human have the responsibility for leading the machine and bringing everything that you are as a leader to your interactions with this machine. And this operates at several levels. One is the very basic level of your basic business skills. You need to think clearly, write clearly, use logic, set up logical discussions, and so forth. If you do not do this, as anyone who's watched our past videos know, you're not going to be able to get what you want out of these machines. Particularly the writing clearly and thinking logically, because you are interacting with a tool that thinks clearly and depends on the substance of your writing to generate the results it gets. So the very first thing you bring is your basic business skills: writing, thinking, speaking, interaction. It almost is strange to call it interpersonal interaction, but you need to know how to interact with tools like this in order to get what you want. But then it starts to go beyond this, that you as the leader are still going to bring into this relationship every one of the leadership skills that you have developed. You and I have talked, Tom, about the mindset. We've actually filmed a couple of videos a while back about how leaders develop their mindset and therefore their instincts in how to go about doing business. This is what these models, or this is one of the things these models cannot bring to the partnership. You are the one who brings the business instinct, the mindset, the purpose to the interaction, and you are the one who defines these things so the tool can do its part in the partnership. Now, at a very basic level, we've talked about how you build your mindset by just being aware of everything, keeping your eye on everything, learning, continuing to broaden your information bases, continuing to look at the marketplace, to evaluate, and so forth. You're always thinking about your marketplace, your industry, your organization. And on the basis of this, and this should have started the first day of your first job at work. So by the time you're a leader, you should have, at least 10 years of developing your mindset and therefore your instincts leading into this. Because you may, for example, in some of our videos, we've had these models analyze a marketplace for us. And the model has generated competitive information, marketplace information, customer information. This is basic information drawn on past data. That's the way these models have been trained. You are the one to say, yes, this is right. No, this is wrong. This is partly right. I need to direct the model in another direction. This is your mindset at work here. And this is what we mean also partly in terms of staying ahead of the model. That is your instincts, your knowledge, and your mindset that tells you whether you are getting out of the model what you want to get out of this model. Because then the next step is going to be translating the model's output into a strategy execution plan, a management plan, or something like that. And if those plans are not right, you will not be doing right by your organization. You will be off in your organization, and your people using these models in your organization will be off. So it's your instincts, your mindset. It's also those things we've talked about as well, Tom. It's your good judgment. And that's judgment about how to use these tools. What can you ask them? What can you rely on them to do? And then it's your decision-making ability. How do you make decisions about the various points of output here. So these are basic leadership skills. I mean, you and I have a long list of leadership skills that we talk about, Tom. But I want to just here in this short conversation, just get out into people's minds the sense that you bring everything that made you a good leader into your being the human part of a human machine partnership. And then it goes further, but let me stop here again and let me give you the chance to jump in here before I go on to some of these other aspects.
So the point about responsibilities is that that recognizing that this technology and the capabilities actually of the technology when used well cause a huge shift in our responsibilities in dealing with it. And we see people naturally are seeing this, but unfortunately they're seeing it from the fear point of view, right? Of this thing's, oh my gosh, it's going to take over the world. You know, you and I get so frustrated over this that people get hyped up. Machines do what they're told to do, right? And what they're allowed to do. And people talk about machines, certain AI models that are doing things that appear to be random and appear to be self-preservation oriented. Well, again, it's the way that you have built that algorithm that's going to either encourage that or discourage it or completely keep it from ever doing that. And unfortunately, this is if this turns out to be what you and I see it is, it's going to have the same effects that all these other great things that we see have. As we've talked about, electricity can be incredibly capable, but it also can be incredibly dangerous. So can fire, can be incredibly valuable, but also dangerous. So can nuclear energy be incredibly dangerous, but also incredibly beneficial. So can water, as we've unfortunately seen tragedies around the world,
Yes.
and including in our own country in major ways,
Yes.
where we have a responsibility to the unfortunate people that are affected by all this and make sure we're as helpful and compassionate as we can be. But we also have a responsibility to say, have we managed that whole situation properly? And inevitably, unfortunately, usually is not the case. That's why it occurred that way. So this is the same thing with this. We have a responsibility. And the way you do this, Deirdre, not the way, but a way to do this is you and I have this concept of staying ahead of the model. It's the same thing. Stay ahead of the technology. Stay ahead of the danger that water can occur in your specific environment. I live at 2,500 feet high. I do that for a reason. I spend a lot of time around the ocean, right? I spend a lot of time in the water, in the water, seeing what water can do.
Right.
I love it. I just love it. I choose to live very high ground, right? And I've always, even in Connecticut, I lived as high as I could live. I lived on the side of a hill and water went down, right? I had to
Right.
go a long way down, hundreds of feet. Um, it's about being smart in the way that you deal with these things. The way you do that is to stay ahead. And this is a responsibility. And we're going to talk about, you're going to write an essay on this because you believe deeply in this and that there are different responsibilities. We're talking about here about the responsibility of the leader, the business, the person who is building something, whatever that is. We'll talk about that responsibility that you have to stay ahead of that model so that you are using and you and your team are using that thing in the most productive way to take advantage of the productivity benefit it gives, which we believe is dramatic, and I think everybody pretty much agrees there. But secondly, as it's changing the substance of work, we're figuring out what that means and taking advantage of that. And also making sure our people know how to take advantage of that and are learning what they need to know and learning how to do it in the best way possible. Now, what does that mean? The best way to stay ahead of the model is to learn to use it, right?
Yes.
Learn to use it first, right? The way you get respect for using, I mean, I studied nuclear power, the power of the capabilities of the nuclear stuff, mostly because I wanted to understand its power for both primary. My purpose was for understanding it in a productive way, but also to understand the risks of the unproductive way, right? The damaging way. Same thing about water. I also learned about electricity. I think it's important that you learn about these things. And we think the way you do it here is learn to use it and learn to use it not just as a productivity tool, but as a way you and learn to incorporate it as the changing the substance of your work in building things and leading things. We've begun a series, and we have that series on this is for the person that leads and builds organizations. And we are going down that path of going to help you in that responsibility to stay ahead of the model, to learn to use it so that you can properly incorporate it in not only the running and the operation of your organization and the changes that need to occur there, but also in the vision that you have and where it's going in the marketplace. And so we'll stay focused on that marketplace. That's our primary mission. And how does that affect? But our secondary one is coming at this. But you and I also see, and this is where I'll stop, dear, and turn it back over to you. We also see that you have a responsibility for using this and helping lead this in your hobbies, in the things you like to do, whether that be in your charity work or giving back work or anything you're interested in, including if you happen to be a parent with a child that is learning. So you have a responsibility there. How do you make sure that your child is using this in a learning process, not using it purely for productivity? So we're going to have a whole nother series on this issue of how do you use this to learn? And this is about helping you as a parent, or helping you as a teacher, or helping you as a professor, or helping you as someone in charge of a curriculum at a university. How do you incorporate this into the learning process so that you are now using it to help teach rather than to just do? And this is the fear that many people have, is this fear of, well, are we going to ever really learn anything? Or are we just going to take the knowledge out of the machine and just do what we need to do using the knowledge out of the machine? Well, the machine is pulling you. You have lost control. You are now behind the machine. I have spent way too much time on this subject because we're going to go down this path. But Deirdre, there's this change of responsibility and that you're going to write. I'm looking forward to seeing this when you're ready. Is this point about it changes our responsibility as leaders. Our job as a leader has now just gotten even more complex, even broader. And then there's another aspect to it that I'll let you take it from here. This aspect of fundamentals still matter, right? And you made that point a minute ago. If those fundamentals still matter. So then the question is, if you're there and going to say, and we're saying, and Deirdre says, you know what, folks, your responsibilities just became greater. You have to now learn how you stay ahead of these things.
Right.
But the next question is, okay, what fundamentals still apply? So at that point, I'll turn it back over to you. And you started to get into this a minute ago, but.
Well, there's just so much to talk about AI, Tom, that you and I could just keep this conversation going for hours upon hours. But one of the points that I'm gleaning from what you were just saying is that part of the mindset of the person using these new models is to understand when the press is just doing PR or when they're saying something valuable. An awful lot of what's being printed in the various media or discussed in various media is at the level of fear. It's not at the level of How do you actually use these? What can these actually do? How can we create the benefit? How can we get the results that would be good results to get from these tools? We're starting to see this in the education field, where, interestingly, a lot of universities are going back to those old blue books and making people write their final exams out by hand, or making students do oral presentations or do oral, getting around a misuse of the technology to substitute. In other words, substituting rote for actual learning, that the universities already are starting to develop ways to actually make sure that the students are actually learning. This directly connects with what I was saying previously about the mindset of the leader in making sure you get the results from these models. We've talked about how you need to get your fundamentals right. You need to be able to write, to think, to set out logical trains of thought. You also need to be able to analyze your marketplace. You are the one who brings, and what I'm starting to do now is get into some fundamental areas that you and I have talked about, Tom, that leaders cannot think that they get to escape by using these models.
Exactly.
It's actually, no, these models can't do this work for you. It is you who have to do this work. Maybe you use the models for certain aspects of it, but you are the decision maker. You are the one who uses the results. Marketplace analysis is a big one. In some of our examples, we've said, what's the marketplace like? What are my competitors saying? Set out a comparison for me. And you and I have looked at the results and said, good start, but it's not getting quite there. It's not getting there. That you as a leader still maintain all responsibility for your knowledge of the marketplace. And what that means is you as the leader are still responsible for everything in the organization that derives from a knowledge of the marketplace, whether that's product development, personnel deployment, go-to-market strategy, all of these other aspects that depend on your instincts, your knowledge of how to take the output from these models and then convert that into a valid strategy for your business. Part of this, and you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, Tom, is making sure that you continue to present or to continue to get a value exchange in the work of your organization. We actually have filmed several videos on the concept of value exchange. And let me remind listeners what this is, that most listeners have heard about the value proposition, where a company says, my products have this value, here it is, marketplace, I'm putting it out there. That's all well and good, but it's the marketplace that determines whether your value proposition is valid in that marketplace or even at all. And this creates an exchange that you may propose value, but the marketplace has to accept the value and then give you something back for that value. Frequently, that's payment, that you get revenue when the value exchange is established. For not-for-profit entities, you may get volunteers. You may get funds from funders. You may get status in the community or the ability to get projects, but there has to be the value exchange there. These models cannot understand value exchange, nor do I think they'll ever get to that point there. They can set out how other entities, how your competitors have defined their value proposition. They've been trained to pull that data out. But it would be hard for them to even define the value exchange after that for the known entities that have already been formed their database, formed their training. And then when you're talking about a new opportunity, a new initiative, they would be hard pressed to even identify the value proposition, but then cannot really establish the value exchange for you. That comes from your knowledge, you as a leader, knowing your marketplace, knowing your customers, knowing how the marketplace works, knowing all of the various factors that feed into the economics of the marketplace. And then you're the one who then determines whether you can establish a value exchange. So here are some very big responsibilities. In other words, leaders out there, don't think that these tools, these models can do this work for you. You have the responsibility to know your marketplace, to establish your value exchange by knowing what you have to do for that. And then to do all of the things within your organization that allow you to establish your value exchange. That includes building your team. That includes building the processes, building the mode of operation, establishing yourself on the various platforms and in business environments. This is you as a leader using your instincts on top of the output that these machines, these models have generated for you. So again, this is mindset. Get out of a mindset, if you ever had it, of thinking, oh, I just turn this machine on and it does this stuff for me. You as the human here have significant responsibilities, not only, as we'll describe in our workshop next Sunday, or Sunday the 20th, not only to create the input that allows the machine to function, that's based on your fundamentals of knowing how to write and think and develop logical trains of thought, but also then to take that output and put it in the context of your instincts and your mindset about your whole marketplace. And at that point, while people are internalizing this, Tom, I'm going to turn it back to you.
So when we've done work, marketplace work, what we have seen is that it pretends like it has the answer, right? So so it will tell you, here's the value exchange, or it will tell you, here are the competitors, or it will tell you, this is something, right? So it'll answer the question all right.
Right.
The question is, how believable is it, right? How real is it?
Right.
And that's when you and I start to vary in terms of these things. One of the tricks, and we'll get into all of this during the workshop, but one of the tricks we use is we have a template for, here's what we want the model to always tell us. And one of the things is a confidence interval in its belief that it has given us good answers. And then also, depending on the kind of work, what could we answer for you that would increase that confidence interval, right? So it tells you exactly how it's coming up with these things. So it does a really good job of those things, but again, there's a lot of naivete in these models, right? Because it's just like anybody that finds a brand new ball that believes that ball can do anything, not just play baseball, but tennis and also soccer, right? I mean, and that is where we've seen it, that it will give you an answer. It'll tell you, here's the value exchange, here's how much it'll do. The question is, how believable is it? And what kind of judgment are you using in there to make sure there's believability in what you're getting from the model? And frequently, and this was the point you made about the model, the analysis of the marketplace, it gave us good analysis eventually, but we had to press it 3 times to say it's not quite good enough. Go deeper. Here's what we want. We had to know where to push that model. It went and got it and did it. But again, this is like this very smart graduate student who doesn't quite know how to navigate that to get to where you needed to go. By the way, we've seen that problem for years when we teach graduate programs on market analysis, that it's very hard to figure out how to get there if you're just a student of the market. And this is why it's very difficult to do capstone projects that have any value when they're market-based, because most of the time a student doesn't have the background in the knowledge of the marketplace and doesn't have that feel that a great market person that knows the market has of what is believable in that market. You know, some of the CEOs we deal with, or the people that entrepreneurs and people that build businesses, they know these markets they're dealing, they know them cold, and they know what works, what doesn't work. They know where it's going, what kind of value they can get. And you know, you made the point about value exchange can be all the way from hard monetization back to just a sense of well-being because you gave back to the community. And your point is, look, it's going to be hard. Uh, the machine can say, well, your value prop was really high because you got good satisfaction from that. Well, how does it know that's what you wanted out of the exchange? So you have to understand these concepts. And this is the point about fundamentals still matter. And one of the things that we'll be doing, one of the initiatives we're taking on is as part of this track of people who are building businesses, leaders who are building things, how do we make sure we help you maintain, okay, what are those fundamentals that we need to keep in mind and keep sharp? But that is a key point, and it all centers around this concept of believability brought about judgment and experience. Um, so with that, Deirdre, why don't we, if you know, I think we've reached a good point of just describing the next few steps here. One is we're all going to look forward to your essay on the responsibilities now of people who are leading in this era change that you see, and maybe to set that up, you might spend a second on this point that you believe when you look at this, the shift that occurs, you don't see this as that we're still in the digital age. You see this as another shift. So it might be worth, Deirdre, spending a second on that, and then spend a second talking about the essay you're going to write, and then the workshop that we're putting together on the 20th, where we're going to go through some actual, okay, how do you do this at the next level beyond the video 62 through 67. So.
Well, let me start with the whole concept of going beyond the digital age. You and I have discussed in the teaching that we've done that there are various ages economically throughout history. We start with the agricultural age, then go to the industrial age. We've spent a lot of time talking with students about the shift to what we call the digital age. And about a month ago, you and I were talking and we were saying, well, but this is more than digital age. There's something fundamentally different about these models. And we came up with the term, the human-machine partnership age, because the digital age, to me, means the use of technology as tools.
Yeah.
While the human-machine partnership age that we're zooming into as quickly as we can here involves using these reasoning models as a partner to accomplish results. That is involving this model, not just as a tool, not just something like a word processing program, but as something that you can gain higher level benefit from if you work with it properly.
Yes.
For better results all around. And that's why we're calling it the human-machine partnership age, that it takes a lot of work on the part of the human. And this ties back directly to my earlier comments about don't believe the PR reports coming out of the tech companies who say, oh, use our models and everything falls into place. It's sort of like, no, they're jumping right over the whole human side of this. So what we're going to start to discuss in our workshop on July 20th is what are the aspects of setting up a human-machine partnership? It's all well and good to know that you have to have one, but what do you do? What do you actually do to establish this and make it work? So you did some incredibly detailed work, Tom, in setting out series of prompts, not only for the substance of a project, but also for the rules underlying the project. And those are two separate things. And most people don't understand that they are two separate things. So we're going to be working with use cases to set out, setting up the rules and then setting up a project, but very specifically pointing to it's the human who sets up the rules, sets up the project, analyzes the results, does the iterations that gets you to the point where you have a basic something that you can use and then takes that further so you get the output that you'll actually use in business. We're going to take you through step by step how you do this so that you can yourself, when working with one or another of these models, start to get the types of results that can come from the use of the human-machine partnership, specifically the productivity and the change in the substance of work that drives a higher level of productivity. And also, and I'm going to drive it, I always do this in the last minutes of one of our videos, I introduce a whole new concept. Don't forget the whole financial aspects, that you as a leader are responsible for the results, not only, for example, the products or the functioning of the organization, but also things like profitability, or for completing projects, or for getting certain other goals done, and so forth. So we're going to show how that factors into this whole human-machine partnership. The machine cannot give you your profitability. It may lead you to ways that you then expand upon using your leadership skills, ability, mindset, knowledge, and so forth to get that profitability. But it itself is not a financial tool. It is a, what to call it, compilation, research, ideation, basic ideation tool. And the more you know how to get those benefits out of it, the more substance you will get out of it, and the better your financial aspects will be, however you define your financial aspects. So that's the next few weeks, our workshop, and then our next few videos and various written materials on this.
You know, that's excellent. And you and I are looking forward to this because
Oh, yes.
one thing that you all are doing, that you're very kind to let us do this work when we're ready. So we weren't ready to film this for a little while because we weren't quite there with our thinking. And we don't want to put things out that we don't believe have enough substance in them to matter. So we're not going to produce something just to produce something and have it in the queue. So we really appreciate all the people that have been watching these, who we obviously don't know most of you. And we really appreciate you spending the time doing this. And we welcome hearing from anybody. Our contact information is readily available on both YouTube and on Patreon and on our website. So we welcome hearing from any of you who want to talk about this further. And because the more we get engagement from you all in this, the more it'll help us. And this is at all levels. Thinking about this issue of responsibility, even if it's as a parent, helping parent your children in learning in a more a clearer way using these capabilities. And I get asked this almost every time I see somebody. It's somebody who has an interest in this, who is coming at it from a different point of view. I literally, as you know, Deirdre, fortunately, I had some friends in town. One of them is a literal rocket scientist.
Yes.
And she was interested in aspects of this, both because she's a parent and also because she is a rocket scientist and at one of our most famous laboratories, rocket laboratories. And she wanted to understand better how to use this, and also to drive my self-driving Tesla, which was a whole different issue. They were trying to set a new speed record, I think, on the highway, which is not a good thing necessarily, but especially from the back seat, which is where I was. But she and her husband sure had fun, that's for sure. But so please engage with us, because we appreciate that. And I get it from the neighbors when I'm walking the dog, or from my friends, or from just people. We would like to hear from you about these issues and hear your thinking, and also help, because it'll help us in our thinking. So any words of wisdom, Deirdre, or I shouldn't say words of wisdom, because you've been giving us words of wisdom all morning. But anything more you'd like to add before we move on to other things?
Just encourage people to come to the workshop if you can. Otherwise, watch our next two videos so you can see how we're really setting out the human aspects, how to be the human here. which is a very interesting thing to contemplate.
Yes, it is. As usual, it's a pleasure. I'm glad we made it to another birthday for you. And I hope you have fun the rest of the day, even though your humidity is, what did you say that your
The humidity is older than I am, higher than my age. So,
yes, which is not a good thing.
not a good thing.
Good thing. Fortunately, our humidity and dew point are significantly below my age, Deirdre.
So,
All right. It's always a pleasure, Deirdre.
always a pleasure, Tom. So long.